What's going on, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review Ludacris's album from 2006, Release Therapy. Now, the thing about this album is Ludacris got a lot more serious on this project, got a new haircut, ditched his cornrow braids, and kind of calmed down a bit. I really feel like to talk about Ludacris on here, I do think that this is one of Ludacris's best albums, but the concept about it is it's not quite as much of a full-blown lollygag party type album like most of the typical Ludacris stuff is. Like if you're looking for like a this kind of complete weekend number, I'd probably go with the Red Light District more. It has more just overall festivities, but this is still as good as the Red Light District, and I definitely feel like this is better than most Ludacris albums. This is better than Back for the First Time, Word of Mouth minus the singles. I mean, Ludacris had better singles on Word of Mouth, but it's better than that album overall. It's better than Chicken and Beer. It's better than Theater of the Mind, and it's probably a hair or two better than Battle of the Sexes. So there's a lot of projects that it's better than, and I'd probably say that it might be better than Ludaversal as well. I mean, that's a pretty short project, but that's just kind of the concept. So I look after it. I would say that this is basically one of Ludacris's top three best, apart from Red Light District and possibly Word of Mouth in terms of the singles. But this is just really that good, because the thing about Ludacris on this album, he sounds comfortable, and he really sounds like his lyrics are on point. He's got great flows on here. You want to hear more of him when he's on the songs with his guests, and he does have guests a few times to the point, and he only drops one verse. So it's kind of like when you lose Ludacris on there, it's like, damn, you wish he would drop a second verse on there and put some extra kind of momentum on the song. In some cases, you want to hear him more than the guests, but he does that, kind of like Young Jock and some other folks that kind of did that. And like the hooks are good, his energy is good, and just overall, like I said, Ludacris sounds really comfortable, and it's quite charming just because the overall effectiveness where you don't have to worry about bad lyricism and bad kind of emphasis and execution. It just makes for a fun project where you can just kind of concentrate on the song topics and whether or not the production and the song value is good. And you don't have to worry about the as much of the artist. So Ludacris is he's reliable on this project. And I just feel like it's just a very solid offering. I think if Ludacris would have just had like maybe one or two more party records on here and maybe one other hit single, I would have said that this probably would have been Ludacris's best album. This is that, like the composure that Ludacris kind of had on this project is just that good. He just really had the emphasis down, and it really wound up making him marketable. I mean, even this late in his career, I mean, by this point, most people were not quite that drawn by the time they got to their fifth album or 6 years in. But Ludacris just kind of effortlessly did it, and he didn't have to put out the like the snap rap and that type of stuff that was popular in 2006. He just kind of sailed over it. And so Ludacris gave us a number one and a number two single, and it's basically, I mean, these were some of Ludacris's best chart. I mean, this is probably his most popular album in terms of Billboard chart appeal, but then it just kind of comes off as it does not. I mean, I do think it probably could have used a couple more hit singles, but this still has done the best when you think of like the most mainstream Ludacris record. This is probably the one you think of because these outdid the ones on Word of Mouth. And besides Stand Up from Chicken and Beer, it basically is Ludacris's best chart. But Chicken and Beer is close, but I feel like this one's just probably better just overall. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles. So now Wikipedia says that there were five of them, but I really don't recall at all Girls Gone Wild being released as a single. I don't know if it actually was. I suppose I could talk about all five of these, but I really felt like there were only four because I just remember at least hearing three or four of these on the radio. But the first single is Moneymaker. And the thing I like about this song, Moneymaker with Pharrell on here, is it just is like such a calm and I mean, it's a club bop, and it's definitely like not just a club bop, but it's just an overall party single, a great kind of social outing weekend kind of song. But it's just so sophisticated and kind of highbrow. I just think that that's kind of the concept. It's just so kind of like blue blood of like a single, especially for a rap song. Yeah, it's just so blue blood of a single, especially for a rap song. I mean, the closest song I can think of that made kind of the sophistication of this chart appeal was basically Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. That's about the only really other blue collar, white collar, kind of just sophisticated party type song that just it's not like it's kind of raunchy in the lyrics, but it's just kept within the production where it just feels a lot more knit together. It just kind of feels like the thing. It's not quite as crazy raucous energy of stand up or move bitch or as raunchy as area codes or as in your face as Get Back or some of those. I really feel like this is kind of a very presentable Ludacris single. It definitely works well. Pharrell really helps out with the hook. This has a pretty hypnotic kind of hook. Pharrell just basically, I mean, it's not even in his falsetto pitch like he normally does, but it just kind of works as just like a chantable, recitable kind of song, and it's just really kind of hypnotic the way that it goes. And Ludacris just pretty much effortlessly sails through the song. It just was simple enough. Like you would think just by how easily this song hit number one that you would think Ludacris would have had like a third, fourth, and fifth single that would have been up there with it. But it just, I mean, this was just kind of an odd song just because it's kind of an undervalued Ludacris song these days. I mean, this song hit number one, but I don't really hear this on the radio too often, which is too bad. This would be a nice, clever charmer to kind of hear nowadays. I mean, it's just an appealing song, especially with the snap rap and the ringtone rap that was going on around that time. I mean, Ludacris just delivered a lyrical barb just within the club party sense, and it just worked effortlessly. This really happens to be a thing. Grew Up a Screw Up was the second single, and this has Jeezy on there. And this is kind of more of like a street single and a mixtape cut. I did kind of like it. I like that this kind of had like the DJ drama and Don Cannon type feel that was typical in the mixtape vibe back in those days. Jeezy in his prime, just throwing out the thug raps and that type stuff, and Ludacris kind of giving a gritty and grimy type feel as well. I definitely liked it. I feel like, I mean, the hook is just ripped from a Biggie song. I think it's ripped from like the song he did with Tupac off the Resurrection soundtrack. And it just really happens to kind of be, I mean, it's pretty stellar. I mean, that's just the thing. I mean, it doesn't really have chart appeal. It's not really something. I think Ludacris was at least aiming for the charts by making this a street single, but I think it's a little bit grittier than what probably would have happened for a radio single, but it is good. I definitely like the song. It's another follow-up hit. Ludacris gives us a street single just to kind of prove that he hasn't gone soft or commercial or something like that. So it's a good one to have. Runaway Love was the third single, and this was like where the serious type vibes start coming about, talking about like, problems that young girls are having nowadays. Very similar to Brenda's Got a Baby. I think that's where Ludacris drew inspiration from, is Tupac's Brenda's Got a Baby. Just the fact that Tupac's single came out in 1991. So it's basically like a late 2000s version of what Brenda's Got a Baby would be. And Ludacris did a pretty good job with it. This is not a song I'm going to recommend because I didn't enjoy it that much, but it's a solid kind of straightforward kind of song if you're looking for something that has a little bit more palatable value. I think that's this kind of thing. If you like the concept of hearing something that's not just tasteless twerking and like popping bottles and that type of stuff, it does have some food for thought, but it is kind of serious to the point where it's kind of like, I mean, it can get tiresome after listening to it like, 20 times, something like that. So it's just kind of, but it can be interspersed. It charted pretty high. It hit number 2 on the Billboard 100. So it's just kind of to say that it did pretty damn well, but it's just kind of just depends upon how many times you want to listen to it. And Girls Gone Wild is supposedly the fourth single. I don't know how well it charted, but I really enjoy this song. I mean, I really feel like this is the kind of single that probably should have charted a lot higher. And I definitely feel like it's just Ludacris basically just on his complete festive vibe. And if he would have had a whole album of songs like this, probably would have easily gotten a 10 out of 10. I'm just going to have to say this is just the energy behind it, the Neptune's production on here, the overall emphasis, and just the southern drawl that Ludacris kind of had on this project is just so emphatic and executed extremely well. This really works. Easy kind of hypnotic kind of energy that just makes you want to, have a crazy time on the weekend, something like that, or just overall just get drunk, something, have a great time. The fifth single is Slap, and this is actually, I remember hearing this on the radio a time or two, not very often. It was the worst charting single out of the 4 that were the standard singles. And I like this song. I like it just because Ludacris talks about wanting to slap a motherfucker at his job or something like that because he's pissed off and tired of the day to day type vibe. It's kind of a blue collar Ludacris song, which is interesting because for the most part he didn't really rap in blue collar type vibe. So it's interesting kind of get one that kind of has a more office schematic, schematic like the show The Office, more intended for like having to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, be at work by 9, that type stuff, and get there and kind of just deal with the daily trials of Bill Payne and that type of stuff. It's pretty interesting seeing it from Ludacris's perspective and seeing what he thinks about those particular situations. Definitely a charming song. It's definitely one that he has not done before. I mean, for the most part, I cannot think of singles that he has made like Slap prior to this point. I mean, for the most part, Ludacris is usually pretty festive and more concerned with like going to clubs, strip clubs, night venues, and out and about. But songs like Move Bitch and yeah, songs like Move Bitch and Saturday Ooh Ooh and Roll Out and some of those type songs. But this is another one that kind of showcases the basic concept that it's a different kind of more serious appeal because this is, I mean, it's a clever and kind of woozy song. I really like the kind of synths that are in, maybe not synths, but just the airy kind of, I like the airy kind of distortion and slaps. Really got fantastic production, and it just really feels like a song you could hear on the radio back in the day. I'm surprised that this song did not chart higher and be like a chart at like the fifth chart at like 1525 on the Billboard 100. Definitely should have charted way higher than it did. And this kind of the emphasis just talking about going from like a serious song like Runaway Love to like a more blue collar song like Slap, and it's just kind of the emphasis behind that really kind of shows that. But I think we could tell by this point that Ludacris was kind of running out of energy in terms of singles because there's really not something that, and yeah, to say another one, that the blue collar party type vibe, the work kind of party vibe of Moneymakers, another one that was kind of serious in terms of the singles. So it's just it really kind of was just a lot more uptight and more suit and tie of an album, just to kind of say the blue collar vibe of Moneymaker, the serious type vibe of Runaway Love, and then the blue collar kind of malaise of Slap. That just kind of happens to be the concept. But yeah, it's just kind of, I mean, maybe he thought the Slap was going to do better, but it's really too bad that song didn't chart higher. Talk about the songs I recommend to you. Out of 14 songs on here, it's kind of a compact album, but out of 14 songs, I'm going to say I wound up recommending 9. So I'll go ahead and recommend those to you. So they'd be Slap, Ultimate Satisfaction, End of the Night, Girls Gone Wild, Moneymaker, Mouths to Feed, Grew Up a Screw Up, Do Your Time, and Woozy. So to really talk about some of these, like I feel like Ultimate Satisfaction probably has one of the best beats on here. It's just a real crazy kind of distorted, crunchy kind of song that just the synths go crazy. And the song really feels like you're really smoking and just enjoying the haze of like some purple haze and that type stuff. I mean, I really wish that Ludacris would have dropped a second verse on this song. The Field Mob, because there's 2 of them, they kind of take up verses 2 and 3, and it's too bad because a fourth. I mean, Ludacris did such an excellent job on the first verse that he needed a fourth verse just to kind of patch it up. But it's kind of one of those songs that doesn't have like a typical flow on here. I mean, it kind of does, but it kind of doesn't. Ludacris does some creative stuff on here. It just makes you want more Ludacris. But Field Mob do a pretty well job. They do well also. End of the Night has a brilliant hook by Bobby Valentino or Bobby V. They did a great song with Pimpin' All Over the World, but I almost feel like End of the Night is better. I feel like Bobby V's hook on End of the Night is just better. It's more catchy. I mean, it may not be quite as single ready, but it definitely has a better emphasis. It's one of those songs where you realize that some songs are better than the singles, but they don't chart for whatever reason. I would have almost chosen this song as a single. Ludacris did a great job. This completely tore the song apart, and this had an overall emphasis. Mouths to Feed is another mixtape type cut. If you like the vibes of Grew Up a Screw Up, Mouths to Feed is another one that kind of feels like a DJ Drama, Don Cannon type feel. It's a real song about having to get up and get it and have shit to do and that type stuff. You gotta get up off your ass and get forth with the day. And like the song says, Mouths to Feed. Just overall, I would have to say I like that mixtape vibe. I like that Ludacris at least tried to bring the mixtape vibe to this because he did drop a mixtape called Pre-Release Therapy that has some more cuts. If you really like Ludacris from this particular context, I'm gonna eventually review that. But that's just kind of the thing is to be able to say that grew up a screw up and mouths to feed. There may not be an overabundance. The Warning intro is a third song that kind of has that mixtape vibe. But it's just interesting, kind of have that kind of Can't Ban the Snowman and Trap or Die type feel that Ludacris was even a part of back in the day. So it's just good to get one like that. Really did appreciate Mouths to Feed. Do Your Time is another one that kind of has that mixtape feel. This kind of real feels like a street single. Has three rappers that have been to prison: Beanie Siegel, Pimp C, and C Murder. I really like this song just because it's just about the folks that go to prison, what they have to do, and just to keep a sane head and just, do your time and kind of stick with it so you can get out and that type stuff. It's just kind of, I'm glad that Ludacris made that song. It's just kind of one of those songs that he didn't have to do, but it's kind of one of those songs that he didn't have to do. It was kind of charming that he did. It's kind of an extra benefit to kind of get that song because it's just not, it didn't feel like wholesomely like a necessity, but it's cool, slick moment that he kind of went along and did it. And then Woozy is a real kind of hazy, like it said, woozy kind of song with R. Kelly. Definitely like the approach to this song. Just really felt like overtly drunk, just having a bottle above, something like that. Nice bit of Crown Royal, just some song that you're messing with some chick, something like that. That's really maybe at a hotel. It's interesting because there are some hotel songs on this album. I feel like there's like at least three songs that kind of just remind me of like hotel life. Whether you're yeah, just being there with a date, just kind of chilling at the Marriott, something like that. I feel like Moneymaker, End of the Night, Woozy all kind of have like hotel kind of feels. Just the overall course of being at some place where you're just staying for a couple nights, something like that, and just appreciating the surroundings, going swimming, that type of stuff, flirting, that sort of stuff. I just would have to say it's interesting kind of get that. And yeah, just some overall great moments. I think I talked about most of these. End of the Night, Ultimate Satisfaction. Girls Gone Wild is, of course, a really hypnotic and entrancing one that just is really brilliant energy. So, but to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy, the five songs I didn't enjoy. I mean, Freedom of Preach really shouldn't have been on this album. It just felt really extraneous and pointless. I don't know. I mean, that was kind of taking the serious concept of it. I just don't know why it felt necessary to kind of be on there. It just really felt preachy, like it says on there. It's just because it's kind of unnecessary. I don't know. This was and Tell It Like It Is, I think, was kind of another mixtape cut, but I just was not vibing with the beat on here. I definitely like Mouths to Feed and Do Your Time, but this is another one that this is kind of more serious, Ludacris. But maybe I could almost say that this is an almost song, but at the moment I just was not vibing with this song. And like Warning, the intro, that had like, I did like the mixtape type feel of Warning, the intro, but I felt like the beat was just a little bit too short of a loop to kind of get into. I mean, it's typical of like the mixtape vibe that was kind of around that time, but the loop in the song was just too short and too kind of, it can get annoying just how quick that one kind of was. If it would have had like that type of production, but this would have been a little bit better, like a notch or two better, I probably would have picked that one also. But there's just some ones on here that really kind of get close in terms of some ones that I feel like, I really do feel like this is probably one of Ludacris's best albums. Like I said, I feel like this is a great album. And Tell It Like It Is and Warning were really close to being songs 10 and 11 out of 14 that could have been furthermore hits. And that just relatively kind of happens to be the concept. And I just look after it. And so that would basically mean that the only songs I didn't enjoy out of um, out of 14 would have been War with God, Runaway Love, and Freedom of Preach. And I didn't like War with God just because that one was kind of an odd song to kind of have. I mean, I know that Ludacris was just beefing with people. It was kind of his response to like the hate that he kind of said. It just kind of felt odd for like a song that is just talking about beef with everybody and just stepping to any type person. It was just a little bit kind of over dramatic. I felt like the production was kind of over dramatic and it was just almost kind of cheesy and how the song kind of was. But I did like Ludacris's attitude on the song. I like that he was just willing to step up and go toe to toe with whoever wanted problems with him. But I just felt like the production was kind of cheesy and it just was kind of dramatic in a way that was almost kind of corny. So that was just kind of the concept behind it. But it is decent that he had that approach. If it would have been on better production, I probably would have liked it. So but I'm going to give this album, me liking basically 9 songs out of 14. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a either a 7.75 or an 8. I'm just kind of feeling I think I'm just going to give it a 7.75 just because I respect the emphasis of the album. Definitely some good moments on here, but I do feel like Freedom of Preach shouldn't have been on there. War with God should have been better production. Warning intro, same thing. And Tell It Like It Is, maybe that would be an almost song. I would say if I liked that song, it would definitely get an 8, but I just am kind of, I don't know if I could just because it just was not gelling with me at this particular moment. But I would have to say basically over half the album is pretty rock solid. I mean, it just has different vibes. Even the fact that there's not an abundance of party songs like Girls Gone Wild, End of the Night, Moneymaker, and Woozy, I do feel like there are some moments on here that kind of have some food for thought that's worth talking about. I do feel like Slap is a great blue collar song just to kind of get through the day to day kind of malaise. I feel like Grew Up a Screw Up's a great mixtape song, and so is Mouths to Feed and Do Your Time. So those are just some great kind of more street grimy type songs. It's kind of talking about the hustle and the hard days and that type stuff, the more gritty kind of Ludacris that you may thought he forgot about. So it just has some of that in there. I just feel like, if anything, I would have almost liked another song like Slap. I really feel like Ludacris and that blue collar, more kind of suit and tie type vibe is an interesting aspect for Ludacris. I would have liked to see if he could do that more. I just wonder what another song in that sort of aspect would have been like. But it's got some sophistication, got some blue collar, got some serious topics, some mixtape cuts. It's just got a bunch of stuff. I mean, I really feel like originally I thought that I didn't like this album as much, but it's a really crafted and toned project. And I just think that that's kind of the thing about it. It really is quite charming. Ludacris is in his prime. He doesn't slip in the lyrics. He's got some great flows. So it's just an overall effectual kind of project. It just is disappointing that this was like a song or two short of having just a couple more hits, but still for the most part is above average. Like this is better than almost all of Ludacris's albums minus the Red Light District. So it's the thing. The social score I'm gonna give like an 8.5 out of 10, just because it has so many cuts, like Do Your Time, Mouths to Feed, Grew Up a Screw Up, Moneymaker, Great with Buddies, Girls Gone Wild, Ultimate Satisfaction. I mean, there's just some great moments on here. Plenty of hits, number ones, even some serious stuff depending upon if you're on a different kind of vibe. If you have like some bad days and more serious moments and stuff. So this overall has, it's pretty sociable album. I almost want to give it a 9 in terms of social. I would just say that there's more than enough on here. I'll go ahead. Yeah, I think I will go ahead and give the Ludacris Release Therapy a 9 in terms of social, just because it just has so many cuts intended for stepping out. It's just a very social butterfly kind of a project. I just would have to say, in terms of the future, like Ludacris has not dropped an album since 2015. It seems like he's just into acting and that type of stuff. We've talked about this before, but I do feel like this is definitely when you have to say if there should be 2 or 3 Ludacris albums you should pick up, this should be one of them, because this is him completely when he was in his prime and just doing most things right.